Talking about the IB, what is an IB program?
So the International Baccalaureate program was started in the early 1950s. It originally started in schools around the world because diplomats wanted kids to have a consistent curriculum as they move from country to country.
Okay.
Since then, it has really exploded, particularly in North and South America. Kids take college-level courses, similar to AP, but different. Where they can earn college credit. They learn the skills necessary, the academic and social emotional skills necessary to be successful, whether they move on to college, they move into the military, they move into the workforce, what have you. As a teacher, I taught both IB and AP. They're both very good programs, but our kids consistently come back from their freshman year of college, and one of the things that they talk to us about is how well they write. When you look at what kids need to be successful, nonfiction writing is one of the best tools that kids can learn to be successful in college. And our kids write, they learn the writing process, they learn how to write in different disciplines, so scientific writing, historical writing, what have you. We work on our analysis skills as well, and they learn not only from an American-centric point of view, but they learn from points of view from different cultures and countries all over the world. Marshall has students that represent 92 countries and 75 languages, so we have a very, very diverse student body. We look at that as a strength. Particularly because we have one of the largest, most successful IB programs in the United States.
Now, it says that there's only 4 of them from what I've read in my research, that there's only 4 schools in the country that integrate the IB into the everyday curriculum in math and science and some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to that for a second on how you guys got to that point?
So what I think you mean is that there's very few schools in the country in which almost every student in the school participates in the IB program at one point or another. About 5 years ago, we started doing a lot of research around what makes kids not only get into college, but finish and be successful in college and attain a degree. And the number one indicator, and there's more and more research coming out about that, is the rigor of their high school curriculum. And so kids who take what is a rigorous curriculum for them, that doesn't necessarily mean they're taking 8 IB classes, although that is possible, tend to be much more successful in finishing college as the kids that don't. So we set upon a journey to figure out how we can tear down some of the barriers to our honors and IB courses that some populations of our students normally wouldn't have access to. So long story short, 96% of our senior class, when they graduate, has taken at least one IB course while they're here. That far exceeds the school board goal of 90%. And we are leaps and bounds ahead of most other schools in Fairfax County being a very strong, one of the strongest school systems in the country. So, we're ranked very high in World News and Report. I'm messing up the name.
Right.
But
I'll look that up.
Yeah, right now we're number 6 in Virginia. And we're number 351 in the U.S.
That's the World News and some report or whatever.
We're in the top 1% of all schools in the nation.
Okay. The dramatic, a big $60 million renovation to the school. You went from 1,300, which was normally a small school, up to a 2,150, which puts you really in D6, Division 6.
We are in Division 6, yes.
In athletics. So can you talk about how the growth of the school has helped the school?
I came here in 2007, as I said. We had approximately 1,250 students in 2007, and now we're hovering around 2,150 or so.
It's a big jump.
I think it has allowed more and more of our kids to participate in our athletics, to participate in our activities. We have over 100 student clubs here. students who want to start a club, there's a process they go through to start clubs. I mean, I can remember we used to have a knitting club and a breadmasters club, and we have the political clubs and non-political clubs and what have you. But it's made us more competitive in our sports, certainly. But it has also allowed kids to explore whatever interests they have outside the classroom. One of the things that I talk to rising ninth grade parents and students about is, yes, we are a very strong academic school and we're very proud of that. But I want you to have balance in your life too. Balance for you might mean I'm taking 2 IB classes, I'm taking 1 IB class, because I'm a tri-sport athlete and I'm involved in 3 other clubs. I tell my kids that if you're doing homework all weekend, every weekend, you don't have that balance. And so we need to work with you and your family to help you find that balance. I strongly believe that, if kids are challenging themselves at an appropriate level and they're involved in our school community outside of the classroom, that they're going to be successful no matter what they choose to do. As a principal, what I worry about is student mental health. And student mental health is something that's more and more in the news and in our culture. And so, I was one of the first principals to advocate for therapy dogs. So we have therapy dogs that come in every once in a while for kids to work with. We have very strong counselors. We have 8 school counselors. We have a very strong social worker and school psychologist here for kids that might need social emotional support. And we work with our teachers to ensure that they understand what the signs and symptoms are of kids that may be struggling. We really pride ourselves here on knowing our students as individuals. When I walk down the hall, I want to know your name. And it's not just, oh, that's the kid that misbehaves. Absolutely not. That's the kid that's doing 3 sports and did such a great job last week at the band concert, or scored the winning bucket at the basketball game, or what have you. So this is a very tight-knit community that's very diverse, and we're very proud of that diversity.
From 2007 to today, the social media has exploded.
Yes.
And there's a great deal of good and bad things that come out of that. Are there any controls? Are there any classes, courses, instruction, seminars? How do you handle that?
So we do have digital citizenship lessons that we do with kids. We did one at the beginning of the year around kids recognizing, or us teaching kids to recognize that once they put something out there, it is part of their digital footprint, whether they delete it or not. Deleted does not mean deleted. We try to work with our kids to use social media responsibly. Many of our athletics teams and our clubs and whatnot have their own Twitter accounts, have their own Instagram accounts, and we monitor them to make sure that they're using them in a positive and responsible manner. This year, every high school student in Fairfax County was given a laptop. So, Fairfax County is the 10th largest school system in the county, and everybody thinks in the country, I'm sorry. And everybody thinks that, all of our kids our families are wealthy, but there's a lot of poverty in Fairfax County. I worked in 2 schools in particular that had a very high percentage of students that were on free and reduced lunches. And so we want to level the playing field for all of our kids in the classroom. And so Fairfax County Public Schools, beginning this year, is supplying, or did supply, a laptop for every one of our high school students.
That to me that's pretty incredible. So let's talk about do you have anything here about kids? First of all, 2 things: bullying is big and giving back is big. So do you have bullying issues that you have to deal with here? And when you do, how do you get your arms around that?
I think every high school deals with bullying. I think that more and more in the years I've been administrator, I think people's definition of what bullying is has become a little bit more broad. Bullying really is a behavior that happens over a period of time, multiple times. Regardless, if a kid teases a kid, bullies a kid, harasses a kid, it's not okay. I think that our kids have become more and more willing to report those things to us. And I have a 0 tolerance policy for all of it. So we investigate every single one of those the moment that they're given to us. Sometimes it ends in me getting our police officer involved. A lot of times it simply involves getting the students' two counselors together in a room. We have a pretty robust restorative justice program here, where we can put kids in a room and give them a structured opportunity to be able to say, when you did this, this is how it made me feel, and vice versa. And we resolve a lot of student conflict that way, because that tends to nip a lot of those things in the bud more often than an administrator looking at two kids and saying, don't do that, don't do that. So we take those things very seriously. Cyberbullying is one of the types of bullying that we see. But for the most part, I would say that we don't have a lot of it. And our kids are, we don't have many discipline problems here at all, quite frankly.
Question is, I know that you probably have a food bank here.
We do.
And do kids work to distribute that? In other words, are they volunteering? Is there any volunteerism that the kids do here with that? Mm-hmm. And if so, do you call on the corporate community? I mean, Tyson's Corner is exploding with all these big corporations. Mm-hmm. Do any of them give back to the school? Are they working with kind of expanding that program?
So we have what we call the Marshall Market. It was actually started by a group of our parents several years ago. We do get some corporate donations. We get a lot of parental donations. We do have a group of students that help to stock our market when we get those donations, and they work with a group of our parents, as well as my administrators. And we have a position here. One of my administrators is a systems of support advisor, so he works with all of our students, but in particular he works with some of our neediest students. So for example, we just had Thanksgiving a couple weeks ago. We distributed almost 50 bags of food for Thanksgiving to our families. And so our school counselors also work very closely to ensure that as much as possible, our families who can't afford large amounts of food are fed. And many of those students will get weekly bags of food to go home for the weekend.
Cool. Let's talk about, I was at a party the other night, and I was talking to a guy that actually teaches cybersecurity. He's a mentor here. Mm-hmm. He went here, he was a student here, he's a big cybersecurity guy, and he comes mm-hmm. back and mentors other kids that go on to Google, and I think he said Google, Yahoo. He whipped off a couple of big names, mm-hmm. Of kids that are actually working in that industry. Is student mentoring, or people coming back to the school to mentor these kids? This, I think, was a cybersecurity program.
Yes.
Does the school have sponsorships? I mean, how does that work?
So Capital One Bank has a group of folks that come in and mentor some of our students. We do have several, actually, cybersecurity corporations that come in and mentor our kids. We have a cybersecurity club that has over 100 kids in it. We have an academy here. So the Marshall Academy is a Virginia Governor STEM Academy. There are very few governor's academies in the state of Virginia. What essentially that means is we meet some selective criterion to be able to offer specialized courses to our students where they can earn industry certifications in a variety of fields. So, many of our cybersecurity students here have taken network, Cisco, cybersecurity essentials. They're taking a lot of the cybersecurity courses here in high school that many juniors and seniors are taking in college, and they're leaving high school being able to literally go get a cybersecurity job and make more than I'm making right now.
It's pretty crazy.
It's pretty crazy.
It is
we have been a national finalist 6 times in the Air Force Cyber Patriot cybersecurity competition.
Wow.
So that really is a strength of ours. STEM is something that we pride ourselves on, but we also have a really
Can you
strong.
explain STEM? What does that mean?
So science, technology, and mathematics.
English and math.
English and math, yeah. So as I said, we offer a lot of cybersecurity courses. We have robotics. We have several different levels of engineering courses. We offer every level of math you can think of and then some. and we have teachers from industry that come and teach many of our classes. I have 2 former NASA scientists that teach here, and our kids benefit from those teachers having worked in the field, because they're able to apply what they're learning to real world situations.
First of all, do schools or does Marshall, do you guys look at any of the greatschools.com? Do you look at their stats? Do you look at their ratings? Does that concern you? Do you care? Do you do anything to upgrade scores? I mean, what are your thoughts on?
So I'm not a big fan of rankings, for a variety of reasons. The big reason being that they can be fairly subjective and not particularly scientifically based. Great Schools is one in particular that I'm feuding with right now, or we as a school system are, because they do not get IB test score data. And so when you look at advanced level course and advanced test data in Great Schools, you don't see any, because for a variety of reasons, they don't receive that data from the federal government when they ask for data. So I've actually reached out to the IB organization, and the IB organization is actually working with them to figure out a way to get them our data, because if they saw our data, I have not a doubt in my mind would be a 9 or a 10 out of 10. The fact that 96% of our students in this building participate in at least one IB or honors course, and that we have one of the highest IB pass rates and one of the largest, most successful IB programs in the country.
Number 1 in the state.
It is the number 1 in the state.
Yeah.
That's the data that matters more to me than what a non-scientific process says where we rank. I know that our kids are going to college and being successful because they come back and tell us, and we track them and we see the success that they're having.
It's unfortunate because we've all become dependent. If we were to go to Naples, Florida, and we're looking for a restaurant, we go to whatever.
Go to Yelp.
TripAdvisor, you go to
Right.
all that. And unfortunately, greatschools.com is the Yelp. And people are coming here from around the country, from the West Coast, from Washington, D.C. or Arlington, and that's all they see is a number, and they look at some test scores.
Absolutely.
But what we're saying is, I guess, that the IB, the real crowning jewel of Marshall High School, is not even visible on that.
Correct.
Is that an inherent IB problem versus AP, or what?
No, I think that's a Great Schools problem.
Great Schools problem.
When you look at U.S. News and World Report, which is the only ranking that I do take some stock in, they have our data.
So World News and Data Report, I'll figure out what it is later. They rate it correctly, and parents should be more focused on that because it has IB ratings in there, as opposed to Great Schools, which do not. They
Correct.
ignore the data from,
Yes.
or they don't receive the data.
Right. The one ranking that all of the 25 high school principals in Fairfax share with or approve of them getting our data is the U.S. News and World Report ranking. Jay Matthews, who is a reporter for the Washington Post, also does a rating that's slightly different from the U.S. News and World Report ranking.
Okay.
His ranking, I think, is fairly accurate as well.
So I think we need to go off the U.S. News and World Report as opposed to greatschools.com.
I would agree.
Because it has all the data.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, in Great Schools, you do see our Virginia State SOL exam data, and all those exams are well over 90%. So that data is accurate, but it doesn't have the IB data in there, and that not only affects our advanced coursework rating on Great Schools, it also impacts our equity rating and some other ratings in there as well.
Do you think it's because IB is not, first of all, do all the ratings of the AP, does that go to greatschools.com?
It does.
That. So basically, the AP, they're getting the data. The IB, they're not getting the data. So
Correct.
It's systemic with the IB program.
Yes.
And we're working with IB to get through to
Yes.
greatschools.com.
Correct.
So the IB schools may not show up as high.
Correct.
But in fact, the IB program, if they took into account those scores,
Yes.
really would
Yes.
reflect that.
And I think there's a misnomer amongst some of our community that kids either can't get or don't get equivalent college credit for IB. as they do with AP, and that's just not true.
It's not true.
It's not true.
Okay.
In fact, I know that, for example, the University of Virginia, at least a couple years ago, was giving more credit for IB than they were for AP Bio, as an example.
Okay.
It's very school dependent. In the state of Florida and the state of Texas, if you graduate with a full IB diploma, you start college as a sophomore. So I think that speaks to the strength of the program.
But a lot of kids, I understand, don't wait for the IB diploma because it comes later and the schools have already decided and they want to get in.
They don't wait, but we have a lot of kids that do it. Between my juniors and my seniors, I have almost 300 kids.
Wow.
That are attempting an IB diploma, and typically we get over 95% of them that will earn it.
Wow. You have a 95% success rate of people getting the IB diploma.
Yes.
And when they have the IB diploma, they start off as a sophomore in college?
If you live in Florida or Texas.
Okay, I see.
Not in Virginia.
Okay, not in Virginia.
But many of our kids do get course credit in college for a variety of courses, depending on various factors.
So when you do take, and I want to basically bring AP and IB, so let's say I take 5 AP courses and 5 IB courses, would all of those apply to college equally?
Not necessarily.
Credits.
It could be that you got college credit for 3 of those IB and 2 of those AP.
Okay.
It could be the reverse.
It could be the reverse.
What we tell families is if that's something that's important to you, you want to look at the colleges where your child's planning on applying.
Right.
But this notion that you don't get credit for IB courses
is incorrect.
That's incorrect.
Okay. Is there anything else that you think people moving to this area need to know about Marshall High School?
Marshall High School is a caring school community where we get to know our kids as individuals. We work together as a team to ensure that every student gets what they need as an individual. And we spend a lot of time counseling our kids, making sure they're taking a course load that's appropriate for them. And as the principal of the building, as I said earlier, I want to make sure that kids are also involved outside of the classroom, because those are the kids that are doing positive things for their families, for our community, that aren't making perhaps some bad choices that they may make otherwise. And if a parent or a family is interested in coming to Marshall, they obviously want to live within our boundary.
I understand you can't transfer in.
No. One of the symptoms of our success has been that we can no longer accept transfers for IB from surrounding school boundaries.
I got to tell you, man, that was solid. That's just some solid stuff.